Uncle Sam could effectively take a slice of your entire net worldwide assets, even if you haven't withdrawn from it.
If we're not growing, you're not growing.
Okay, so Jason Stoch from Uptrend Advisory, and originally from Australia and now a US citizen, and specializing in expat returns for Australians doing US tax returns and vice versa. Mate, I think you're the best one to tell us really what Uptrend is, how did it come about, and what is it that, you guys do?
Thanks, Nathan, for the intro. I'm a chartered accountant in Australia as well as a CPA in the US. I'm the managing director at Uptrend Advisory. We specialize in helping Australians that live in the United States as well as Americans that live in Australia navigate the cross-border complexity, given the fact that it's two very different tax systems with two very different tax laws. I started this business about 6 years ago. I was an expat living in the US on a working visa, and I noticed when it came time for taxes that a lot of the DIY softwares and things like that weren't asking the right questions, and I didn't feel comfortable doing those things. I eventually learned everything that needed to be done, and then you know how businesses start. I had some friends in New York that asked me to help with their returns, and then it snowballed into this beautiful practice where we service many clients all across the US and some Americans in Australia, helping them deal with all of these issues that come up and filing compliantly while efficiently.
Yeah, I love how like a business just organically comes about, and so it was almost like there was no real plan about it.
Yeah, no real plan at all. My background was in M&A, and this kind of just happened where people just kept asking, and then it just became its own thing where it naturally then became my full-time focus.
Yeah, I love the accidental business. It's interesting, like when we compare Australian tax and then to US tax returns, and I guess the obligations in the USA when it comes to income tax. But particularly, when does someone need to file a tax return or any form of taxes with the United States of America, typically speaking?
Yeah, so I think the best way to frame it is everyone that's Australians used to Australia's June 30 year end. The US operates on a calendar year basis, so that's already a big shift and difference. In terms of the deadlines, the tax season is January through April of the following year. So April 15 this year was when everyone's 2024 US tax returns would be due. In terms of who needs to file, that is based on income sources. Is it American income or their tax residency? So that's the two-pronged things that drive whether you need a file. Because let's say you're an Australian that lives in Australia that happens to have some US income. Depending on the kind of income you have, they may not need a file if the issuer of that income is just withholding the taxes, just like a non-resident in Australia with the 10% interest income withholding.
Like I could have maybe a rental property in the United States and I might have to file a US tax return at that point.
Yeah,
But
so
then,
let's
but then very different if, say, for example, I just have maybe some shares that happen to be on a stock exchange in the United States.
Yeah, so if you have a property, then that's a different story. You definitely need to file a return because it's not pre-filled data. If it's something like a brokerage, as long as that brokerage knows that you're not a US tax resident, assuming you're not, they're going to withhold the tax. You don't need to file.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. The struggle that I've always had is clients who I've had in my practice who at one point in time have lived in the United States. Maybe they were residents and they haven't been there for so long and still having to file US tax returns when they're essentially non-residents. This is not me coming on board here going, oh, I think the USA should change everything because of my one idea. But it's quite strange. Have you seen that anywhere else in the world?
I think there's one other country that does it. I think it's a Middle Eastern country. I can't remember the name of it, but the US is one of two countries that taxes their citizens as their US tax residents, no matter where they live in the world. You could live in Australia or Europe or Antarctica, and you're still a US tax resident. And that also extends to someone on a green card. Very different to Australia's domicile and resides test. It's simply, do you have a green card? Are you a citizen? If yes, you need to file every single year, and you remain a tax resident, where when you are a US tax resident, you have to declare worldwide income. You have to declare foreign assets, which is different to Australia, and then also foreign structures, which is different to Australia. So it can get much more complex. Most Australians that do go to the US go on temporary visas like the E3, where they can be a US tax resident while they're living there, and then when they move home, they can cease tax residency in the US. So it just depends on your personal circumstance, really.
How can you overcome that? If you, I guess, would it be as far as removing your citizenship altogether? Is that something you can do?
Yeah, so you can relinquish the green card, you can renounce your US citizenship, but that then has another effect where you might actually have an exit tax. It's a more aggressive version of the deemed disposition where Uncle Sam could effectively take a slice of your entire net worldwide assets, even if you haven't withdrawn from it. Let's say you had investment properties in Australia, you had super, you had US 401k, you had shares. The IRS could take a slice of that as if you liquidated or withdrew everything on the date that you've renounced. So it's something that also needs to be managed and thought through of, do I just accept this as my fate or do I give it up? Is it worth paying this tax? It's a hard one.
Yeah, and I guess that's where then at that point, someone like yourself, like you are so important as part of that planning process. And there's nothing worse that I see with clients, especially clients in business where it's almost put the head in the bucket of sand. I gotta ignore it all and hope it all goes away. That would probably have to be one of the worst things you can do, particularly when it comes to your obligations with US tax, and especially if you want to visit the country. If you haven't filed your returns and you're out of date, they're going to know and they're not going to let you in the country. Have you heard anything like that?
Very rarely have I seen that actually happen where people have issues at crossing in, but it's definitely something that doesn't just go away. There is information sharing between the ATO and IRS because of the whole FATCA regime and everything like that. So they do have the data, it's just whether someone's looking at it. And if you get unlucky to get pinged, that's that risk. But then separately, things can compound very quickly. So unlike the ATO, the IRS has a whole bunch of international forms where if you don't complete these forms, you can get these ridiculous penalties levied on you. And when I say ridiculous, let's say you don't disclose all of your assets in Australia on the one form, they can ping you $10,000 minimum for missing that form. And that's per year times the number of years you're not doing things right. So sticking your head in the sand only compounds the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny comparing the like ATO and the IRS and US taxes, Australian taxes. I feel as though in Australia we're a lot more relaxed when it comes to the compliance of returns. And I guess my experience with US tax returns is probably comes back to a lot of American TV shows in that people get thrown in jail. Is that the reality of that does happen more often? Or is that just really dramatized bad tax compliance?
I think it is dramatized for sure because that's what gets the views. But as for have I seen that happen? I personally haven't seen that happen. I have seen other people in the news that get audited or things like that, but it hasn't really happened to anyone that I've worked with, thankfully.
Yeah, it's good. All right, so 401k now, I know what that is. Can you just really just dumb down what 401k is, just for those who are not aware in Australia?
Yeah, so 401k is the US equivalent of a super fund, if you can think of it that way. The difference is there's no mandatory compulsory contribution by your employer. That is seen as a perk if they contribute to it. So let's say you're looking for a new job, they say your salary is this, medical benefits is this, and this is what your 401k match is, what they're contributing. You evaluate that and you can use it as negotiation if needed. 401k does differ though from super in that it's not as generous. So 401k is a tax deferred retirement vehicle. So let's say you're getting paid $100,000 a year and you want to put $20,000 into your 401k. That reduces your taxable income that year from $100,000 to $80,000, which then decreases your tax that year. And then you're kicking the can down the road to when you eventually retire, where hopefully over multiple years, your 401k has grown into a decent sized nest egg. And then when you withdraw from it, you're taxed at marginal rates based on how much you withdraw. So obviously, you don't take a lump sum, you stagger it based on life needs and things like that. So that's what it is. It's not as good as super.
Yeah, it was quite interesting when I was last in the United States. One of my wife's family members was telling us about how proud he was that whatever his employer paid, they would match up to 4%. So I said, "Oh, what? So you pay 4%?" And then when I told him that mandatory super for us is 12%, he's like, "Wow, you're doing that three times what I'm doing." And I was like, I just have to do that. That's just part of the salary packaging.
Not a choice. Yeah.
No. And it's even like I was talking the other day with a colleague of mine who's representing at the Payroll Association Australia event on outsourcing, and we are talking about this whole thing. It's like when you go and employ someone in another country, you really got to understand their culture and understand how, the taxes apply in that country, but then also just even just say, for example, general culture around holidays. You know, how, like here in Australia, right? And you would know because you used to live here and you lived here for quite some long part of your life. But Australia, like, January shuts down. Like, we have Christmas, and it's this whole period of like work. We flog our guts out, especially the tradesmen of our industry, flog their guts out so hard up until Christmas Eve. And then it's like we have Christmas, and it's just like this whole January is dead. No one's working. Everyone's enjoying the summer, which is kind of, I guess, in a way, like in America, people enjoying July, or more so the kids, I guess. But like in America and then even other countries, it's like Christmas is a one day, it's one and done, the event's done, move on. But yeah, it's just interesting how cultures are different and you really got to understand what they are.
Definitely. I think Australia is much more laid back when it comes to employment and work life and everything like that. Some employers in the US are like that as well, but I would say the majority are very corporate driven. And yes, I remember when I used to work in New York like over 10 years ago, Christmas Day got off, but then the next day back at work, like nothing happened.
Yeah, that's it. All right. If anyone out there who thinks that they might be in a position where they have to file a US tax return, how can they reach out to you and ask what information you got? So this is your time to plug away.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone needs assistance with their US tax filing obligations, please reach out to us at www.uptrendadvisory.com. If you're just looking for information, we do have a blog on our website that does cover many of the pain points for Australians that live in the US or Americans that live in Australia. And yeah, we'd be more than happy to assist.
Cool. And then I got one final question for you because we asked this question to everyone who comes in our podcast. Shoes and socks, what order do you put them on? Is it sock, sock, shoe, shoe, sock, shoe?
Socks, shoe, shoe.
It's good to know. Is it left then right or is it right then left?
That's whichever foot comes up first.
There you go. Jason, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast. And look, guys, I've known Jason for quite some time now, back from when he was here in Australia, then also in the USA. And that's where our relationships formed. And I've sent a few clients my way, and Jason has done a great job helping them out. And yeah, so thank you so much for your time, Jason. And I wish you luck with I love the accidental business of what you're doing and how you're helping people out.
Thank you, Nathan. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me. And yeah, hope you have a good rest of your day.
Will, thanks, mate.